All right, the mysterious masters of Grandmaster Imhotep. Yeah, we're gonna get into it. Welcome everybody. This is the King Cam and Ujumbe podcast and Ujumbe means message. And check this out: Imhotep has been the topic of discussion the last few weeks. A lot of people have been asking, and so we're gonna get into it now. I'm gonna tell you just straight up and down: the historical record does not clearly identify a specific teacher of Grandmaster Imhotep. The multi genius, the legendary man who became legend. Of course, I say it all the time: the legends become legendary. But this absence of information is partially because during this time, a lot of accomplishments pre Third Dynastic period was kind of vague, right? So, and remember, Imhotep lived in the 27th century before Common Era in the Third Dynasty, of ancient Egypt. So he served as the Grand Vizier. Okay, we're going to talk about a little bit more about that, but we're going to talk about that. He was the Grand Vizier or the Grand Architect to Pharaoh Joseph. And so, given his vast knowledge and wide range of disciplines and his education and his training was rigorous. So, let's get into this conversation. Here's the question: who was the teacher of Master Imhotep? Shout out to Mr. Gales for asking me that question. So we're gonna get right into it. I really appreciate you guys for locking in. Let's go. All right, Imhotep. He was the architect. He was the physician. He conducted healing procedures in the Per Ankh or the House of Light. We're gonna talk about that also. And he was the priest and the Grand Vizier. But who was his master? Or did he have a series or a group of teachers? Y'all let me know. All right, now, Imhotep's education and training, he had to learn this from somewhere. He had to go to school somewhere, right? So, what was his training? What was it about? And of course, this rigorous training happened in the grand temples of Waset, and Imhotep was associated with a lot of structure. He was in high knowledge and education. So his training, it is likely that Imhotep received the early training in the temple from priests who had expertise in subjects like astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. Okay, priest scholars were trained in sacred texts, rituals, and healing practices that combine spiritual elements with practical treatment. So they were successful in merging science and the spirit. All right. So, but now I'm gonna tell you this: it's likely that um, this training lasts for a long time. Okay, this just didn't happen overnight or um, just really quick. So while specific teachers, of course, weren't mentioned in ancient texts, we know that there was a system. All right, there was a system. Let's go. And so before we get into the schools really quick, I got to read this information. See, the pre-scholars were trained, and so they gained practices of knowledge and the liberal arts and sciences. So remember that these training grounds were schools. They were schools. They were our universities. Okay, so now the Sesh Schools, Imhotep's skills in architecture and writing suggest he could have attended a Sesh or scribe school, where the scribes learned hieroglyphic writing. They learned the meta-nature, okay, the various forms of that. They learned accounting, mathematics, and administrative skills. So he went to the centers of learning. He went to the temples and he went to learn from the priests. So it wasn't just one individual. It was a lot of teachers that taught him. So he went. So chances are he went to the Sesh schools. Okay, so in these schools, master scribes were highly respected and advanced. Students like Imhotep could have specialized in instruction and architectural drafting and planning and construction. So in these schools, Imhotep would have studied with experienced scribes who passed down mathematical and geometrical concepts that would later influence his architectural innovation. So he these guys weren't named, but the system was already there. the knowledge was already ready to be imparted into him. The knowledge was already there. So we have, let me, now dealing with these schools. Now, as I mentioned before, the temples, there was several of them. Of course, we know about the Waset, or the Grand Temple of Waset, but understand that these, I'm very excited about this. I really am, as you could tell. So, but understand, I'm gonna show you real quick. Let me share this real quick. Understand that this was several buildings, several places. It wasn't just the Grand Lodge of Luxor or Thebes. Okay. Um, Let me show you. Okay. This shout out to my Sudanese brothers who showed me this. This, what you're seeing, is a map. Okay. Shout out to brother Mo. He wants to know about the maps. But as you can see, there was several nomes. There was several places that had different names. And each one of these 40 plus nomes had their own temple, had their own shrine. So there was small localized priests that engaged and did the work there. And then when you wanted to study and really learn, you would go to Ipit Waset, okay? Ipit Suut. And so we will go further a little bit later on into that, into the different hierarchies of priests. But yeah, they went and they learned. And as you can see, they went from the south, from Kush, all the way up to the Nile Delta. All right, let's continue. Here we go. So he learned the hieroglyphic writing, he learned the counting, mathematics, and administrative skills, right? So these priests weren't just in the temple. They used this information and went out into society. They went to their various neighborhoods, their various places. Shout out to the fam in Timbuktu in West Africa. A lot of people went to the college in the University of Sakari, and they left and went back to Cameroon. They went back to Nigeria, went back to other places and shared that information and even applied it. Right? So he had to get trained. We don't know who the individual was. We don't know by name, but we know there is a system. We know there is a process, right? So he was trained. He had to go to school and to learn how to read and write. He went to the Sesh Schools. All right, now a little bit more about these schools. So the scribes were very important. They're very important. So we have to understand that he had to study, he had to prepare. And so these scribes learned various information, various books, various forms of the meta-nature. It's not just one. I think it's about 4. Okay, let me know in the comments how many. All right. Now, a lot of these scribes they dedicated themselves to the work and to wisdom. Jehuti represented wisdom, or Thoth. He represented wisdom. So they give their time and their focus on wisdom. And we should really spend a lot of time occupying our minds with useful knowledge. You catch that when you get home. But it's very important that we do spend time reading, spend time writing. Okay? All right, let's continue. Now, he was a grand architect. So the design of Dozier's step pyramid at Saqqara, credited to Imhotep, demonstrates an understanding of construction and engineering far ahead of his time. Now, this monumental design suggests that Imhotep had guidance. It showed that he had guidance in architectural fundamentals, likely from master builders and seasoned architects. So remember, this knowledge has been passed down from the south to the north, right? So it's amazing that people keep forgetting that this information is well over 10,000 years old, uninterrupted. Okay. So additionally, he may have been influenced by earlier smaller mastabas, which is the flat roofs, tombs, which served as precedents for his larger scale pyramids. Knowledge of such constructions of massive building projects would have been passed down from previous generations. Okay, so it either was passed down through the system of the house of knowledge, or through the guilds, or through various families. And so he came into this information, this knowledge of building, of architecture, geometry, has basically been front loaded to him. It was already developed. It was already, fully realized, full blown. Okay, so he came into this. Okay, he came into this system. He didn't invent it. He came into it. Now um, he did advance it for sure, but this was libraries of knowledge given to him. Okay, so he was the grand architect, or the grand vizier, or the Chejeti. All right. Now, I told you he did the work at the House of Light, or the Per Ankh. So he did have some medical knowledge. So this man was a multi-genius, y'all. He was trained with the priest. He was a scribe. He had to be able to write. He's an architect, and he had medical knowledge. So, man, Imhotep is considered, of course, the first recorded physicians. But that's the popular opinion. Okay, the first recorded physician, and is often credited with founding Egyptian medicine. Now, this implies that he would have learned from a tradition of healers and medical practitioners, possibly within the temple schools, or as an apprentice to established practitioners. So he had to get this from somewhere. It just didn't come out the sky. Okay, healers at the time often relied on both herbal treatments and spiritual knowledge. Imhotep's contributions to medicine are legendary. Of course, later on they deified him in Greece, and the Hippocratic Oath. You guys who take the Hippocratic Oath, who are medical doctors and nurses, you owe a lot to our Grandmaster Imhotep. You're very welcome. All right. So I told you he was a medical doctor, and this information, be it from home or from school, he advanced it. He brought it forward. Now, let's continue. Let's go. Now, the priestly hierarchy. I told you he came into the third dynasty, into a system that was already developed, that was already put together. So what was this priestly hierarchy? There was some kind of structure, y'all. There was some kind of, you just didn't walk in and say, I was a high priest. No, you had to go through a process. You had to be vetted, all right, and be tried, or to sit and study and sit and learn, right? Priestly hierarchy. Now, the priestly order, they, of course, at the top was the high priest. That was the man, okay? The Him-Neter-Tepi, or Him-Neter Him-Neter-Tepi, okay? So Him-Neter-Tepi. Okay, he was the grand high priest. He was the guy. Okay, he was the most powerful one. Chances are he was based in Waset, okay, in Thebes, the seat of power. Okay, he often oversaw religious ceremonies, temple administration, and state events. High priests served in the most important temples and were often closely associated with the pharaoh, sometimes even considered his representative in religious matters. So the high priest. So depends on the era. Depends on the era. They may have been the high priest of, say, Osiris, or the high priest of Amun. Okay. Now let's continue. Okay. Now here we go. The chief priests, or overseers of the priests, they were localized. They were the local caste, right? And so below them, below the high priest, were these leaders of smaller temple precincts, or administrators, who coordinated religious activities in multiple locations. So they managed the junior priests and took care of various temple functions wherever they were. So this is the smaller version of that, okay? but I'm going to go back to the large part. So y'all get ready, okay? Now, these chief priests, depends on their location, they would serve in one of these nomes, okay? Depends on. Now, of course, a lot of these priests had to go to the Grand Lodge of Waset, or the Grand Temple of Waset, to be ordained, to be recognized, right? But then they go back to Abydos. They go back to Ipit Wasut or Edfu, okay, or Hierarchopoulos, okay. And you notice this, okay? They're all along the Nile Delta, but for many years we say Kush, right? That's in the south, Kush. But the nomes in the south, there is a nome in the south called Tasseti. The whole place was not called Tasseti. It was basically a neighborhood that was called Tasseti, not a place. It was not a state. Okay, it was like a nome or a neighborhood, right? So we had Tasseti, we had Waset, we have, as you can see, Tameri or Tamaru, all right, right up here at Lower Egypt, further up north, right? And then Memphis or Men-Nefer. So each one of these priests, each one of them were charged to upkeep or deal with the affairs of that local temple in that local area. All right, stop that. Okay, I'm trying to get back to my screen. All right, now the priestly order, let's continue. The Shem priests or Sem priests were the priests that they were at specific class, and it was associated with funerary rituals, and they wore the leopard skin. Okay, they dealt with the funeral rites. They played a key role in the opening of the mouth ceremony. So everybody didn't do that. We would assume that, say, the high priest did it. No, these guys were specialized in this. This was their thing, and this is something that they were called and appointed to do. So the Sem priests, were typically responsible for key events in the burial. Okay. Now the lector priests, okay, or the Hariheb, they were responsible for reciting sacred texts and spells during rituals. They held the privileged position due to their literacy and knowledge. They the ones that spit the information. They the ones that recited history, or they knew which book to go to or which book to read, or they knew those things. Okay. And so, of course, the ordinary priests, they was a broad category. They were also the hymnitcher, and so they was dealing with the feeding and caring of the temple and the people around it. And the Wab priests, they were at the lowest level. They were the priests, and they were the new guys. Okay, and so they performed basic tasks such as assisting the higher-ranking priests in cleaning and preparing offerings. So that's the priestly order. But there's one more. Our sisters, the priestess, women who could also serve as priestesses, though they were less common. According to the Eurocentric view, they say it's less common. However, based on what we've been gathering, a lot of priestesses was working alongside the priests. Okay, they often serve as goddesses or participated in music and dance and temple ritual. Okay, now there are some major priestesses also, but let me know if you want me to discuss some other major priestesses, y'all. So let me know that. All right, put it in the comment. Now, before we do that, really quick, there is a process. Okay, what was the process of becoming an Egyptian priest? We know about Imhotep. We know he was a medical doctor. We know he was all these wonderful things. Okay, but what was the process? Okay, a lot of I'm sure the people want to know how they got to that point. Okay, let's get into this conversation. All right, what was the process of becoming an Egyptian priest? Okay, now the mystery system is like a modern university, but according to Astro Quasi, it was like a person, it would take a person up to 40 years to get this information, right? So why do you think it took him that long, y'all? Why did it take that long? Okay. Now the mystery system had 3 grades, or 3 degrees, had 3 grades: the mortals, the intelligences, and the sons of light, or the Sarah, the sons of light. Okay. And so his training process, this is during the Old Kingdom. This was Imhotep during the Old Kingdom. So the process became, it was very rigorous and it was specific to the culture. Okay. So, and the thing is, dealing with the priesthood, you couldn't you couldn't just walk in and say you want to be a priest. You had to inherit it. You had to be born into this. That's why a lot of knowledge was compounded over eons of time, because it was passed down from father to son, from mother to daughter. Okay. So not only that, it was a social class thing. Okay. So a lot of the upper echelons of society, a lot of those individuals became the priests. But like I said, the mystery system, yes, there's a hierarchy, but as you go, you had to go through these degrees, these processes, the mortals, the intelligences, and the sons of light. So, and let's continue. Of course, Dr. James, Grandmaster James, he said that the neophyte was required to manifest the following soul attributes: control of thought, control of action, fortitude, temperance, evidence of a call to orders or priesthood or of the Kariheb. So as you was going through this process, as you was going up the ladder, you still had to show these attributes. Okay, you had to show them. Now, so in these schools, in this process, younger trainees typically apprentice under experienced priests, learning the procedures for maintaining the temple and the sacred rites. This included rituals for purifying the temple, anointing statues, lighting incense, and the ceremonial presentation of food offerings to the gods of the Neter root. Now, not only that, as they're going through this process, I'm trying to hurry up, but the sacred text that they read, because somebody's asking, what did they read? Yes, they knew mathematics. Yes, they knew the sciences and everything. But yeah, they studied the sacred text, the myths, the hymns, doctrines. Prospective priests learned rituals. Of course, they read the Medu Neter, they read the pyramid text, the Book of Coming Forth by Day, the Coffin text, the Book of Gates. They learned these. A lot of them, especially if you was a lector, you had to know that by heart. That was a lot of information. But if you want to be a priest or a Kariheb, you had to go through that process. So Imhotep had to do that. Okay. So, but he had to be, he too, even though he was Grand Master, even though he was a Grand Vizier, he had to be an apprentice to somebody. Right? He had to learn. So Imhotep did have a master or a group of masters, as we can see. Okay, so we don't know their names. No, we don't. But we know the impact they had on him, because we know that Imhotep impacted us all. He impacted the world. All right. All right. So what's next? Coming up, Queens of the South. That is next spring. That's next semester. We're almost done with wonderful Ethiopians of the ancient Kushite Empire, but I had to stop and answer that question. Shout out to Mr. Gales and the fam. All right, so yes, we're going to deal with the Queens of the South next spring, and our next book, the first female pharaoh, Sebek Neferu, Goddess of the Seven Stars. That's the link is in the description. As an Amazon affiliate, I earn with qualifying purchases at no additional cost to you, but check it out, right? What's next? We will go into ancient Babylon. Yeah, we're going to cover chapters 11 through 13. We're going to deal with the Chaldees, or the land of Ur, ancient Babylon. We're going to get into that. So for more ancient clips, check out Sister Danita Smith, Yaya Sabaka, AE Learning. Tell them that King Cam sent you. All right. Now, here's the books. Imhotep, the African Architect of the Cosmos by Robert Bouval. He's real good. Egyptian Philosophies by Mofik Kitty Asante. The Priests of Ancient Egypt by Serge Sarneron. That's good. And of course, Stolen Legacy by George GM James, awesome. Get that. And the sacred space and sacred function of in ancient Thebes. That's another one in the temple ritual at Abydos. All right. You just heard the mysterious masters of the Grandmaster Imhotep. All right. And you listen to King Cam and Ujumbe podcast, and I will talk to you later.